Hey everyone, so in this video we are going to be starting object-oriented programming in Python, and what we've been doing till now is something called procedure-oriented programming, and that basically means that we're focusing more on the procedure. We perform certain operations by directly writing code for it or using functions or something like that. And when it comes to object-oriented programming, it's more about representing real world objects via their code equivalent. So the first thing that we are going to do here is we are going to create the code equivalent of a pen. So the way we do that is we write class pen and a colon here, and in this pen, actually making a pen would be pretty complicated. It would have a lot of components, but let's just say that our pen has ink in it, and this ink we set it to 100 first. So the way we set something initially is to make a constructor. So this is known as the constructor. So I hit underscore twice and I write init. Actually, there needs to be a def here. So as soon as you see def, that should tell you that it's a function of sorts, and functions inside of classes are known as methods. So init is actually a special method which is automatically called when we create a pen, and we'll see that in a moment. So the only argument that we are going to take here is something called self. So what this self means is that we are going to refer to the pen that calls this constructor using this self argument right here. So what I'm going to say is self.ink equals 100. So we start with 100 ink, and let's just save this as class, let's say, and now what I can do is I can say p1 equals pen. So p1 is a pen that I have. I can create a p2 pen as well. So these are all pens, and this class basically gives us a template for what a pen is like. So we've basically created our own objects. So these p1 and p2 are called instances of the class pen. So let's just get rid of p2 for now, and when I do this, it automatically calls this init method, the constructor. So that's why this init is special, and what it has done now is that for p1 it has set the ink to 100. And we can check that by writing print p1 dot ink. So this dot is how we access the methods or attributes in an instance of a class. So I've done a print p1 dot ink, and let's just try running this, and as you can see I got 100 here. So that means that this pen has 100 ink. And what I can do now is so this ink becomes an attribute of this pen class, and what I can do is I can create a method here, another method, and when you say method for a class, you can relate it to real world operations. So I have a write method which takes, let's say, the number of lines as argument. And once again, the first argument is always self. So let's just write self and then the number of lines. And what we are going to do here is, let's say for every line that you write, the ink reduces by 1 unit. So self.ink equals self.ink minus the number of lines. So let's say I wrote 10 lines, then the ink would reduce by 10 units. So that's what we are going to do. And let's just, after we print the ink, let's just do a p1 dot write, And again, this dot is how we access the methods of a class. So when I do p1.write, I just need to give one argument here. This self argument is passed automatically. The self argument in this case will contain p1 because we wrote p1.write. So if I wrote a p2.write, the self argument would contain p2. So within write, let's say I wrote 4 lines with this, and once again I'll do print p1.inc, and let's just save it and run this again. So as you can see, first it gave me 100 and then it gave me a 96, which means that after I wrote 4 lines, the ink got reduced by 4, so it's 96 now. And another thing I can do is, let's say I don't want to give direct access to this ink variable, and the reason for that might be because let's say I accidentally do something like p1.inc equals p1.inc plus 1. Let's say I accidentally do that, and that really messes up my entire program because I didn't write with this pen and or I didn't refill the cartridge or anything. So, and the ink automatically went up by 1 unit. So if I run this, I'm going to get a 97 here for no reason at all. So this isn't really desirable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop accessing p1.inc like this. So I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to make a def examine refill, and this takes just self as the argument, and it prints the ink in the pen. So what I'm going to do here is just write p1.examine refill, and I don't need to pass any argument here because the only argument I'm receiving here is self, and that's passed automatically. So here again I'll do a p1.examine refill, and let's just save it and run it now. And as you can see, it gave 196 as expected. So we are now accessing this ink only via this examine refill method right here. So the reason for that is that I don't want to give direct access to this ink variable here, or rather I don't want to access it directly from here. And the reason is because I don't want someone to accidentally change the ink in a pen without performing one of these operations. I can also have a def refill pen, and this again will just take one argument, and here I just do self.ink equals 100 again. So if you refill the pen, then the ink becomes 100 again. So here I can do p1.refill pen, and let's just do p1.examine refill, and let's try running it now. I should get 100, 97 and 100, sorry 96 and 100. So that's what I got here. So this is how we make a class in Python. And just to summarize what we've done in this video, we've created the code equivalent of a pen right here. That's a class pen. And the next thing we've done is made a constructor. A constructor is just a special method of the class, and a method is just a function inside a class. So this constructor is a special method which gets called when we do this. When we say p1 equals pen, this constructor is what gets called, and the argument to a constructor is the first argument to a constructor, or in fact any method, is the self, which refers to the calling object. So if I did a p1.examine refill, this self would contain p1. If I did a p2.examine refill, this self would contain p2. So that's about the self argument, and we can make other methods in the class which basically stand for operations that the object can perform. So for a pen, the operations that can be performed are write or examine refill or refill pen. So these are all the operations that can be performed with a pen, and here we've created an instance of the pen. P1 is an instance, and the way we access any variable, be it ink or be it a method like examine refill, the way we do that is we just write p1 dot examine refill. So that's about it for this video, and for the next few videos we'll be doing a lot of object oriented programming. So it'll be really helpful if you can make some classes of your own, define a few methods, and just play around with this. And we'll do more object oriented programming. We'll take a look at a lot of interesting things, so stay tuned for it.